Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2007 supernatural horror film titled The Messengers. Now, The Messengers runs for an hour and 30 minutes long. It is directed by Danny and Oxide Pang. It is produced by Sam Raimi, William Schurak, Jason Schumann, and Robert G. Tappert. The script was written by Stuart Beattie, Todd Farmer, and Mark Wheaton. The score was done by Joseph LaDuca, the cinematography by David Geddes, and the editing by John Axelrad, Armin Minizian, and Jim Mirkovich. And the stars of the movie are Kristen Stewart, Dylan McDermott, Penelope Ann Miller, John Corbett, and twins Evan and Theodore Turner. Now, what did I think of this movie? Well, the cliched scare moments in a horror film is when an ear-ringing sound is followed up by a musical motif, which then coincides with an inanimate object unexpectedly zooms right past the camera lenses as a visual indicator that trouble is only moments away. So the purpose of these scare moments is to produce goosebumps manifesting on your skin. Now, most horror fans take pride of the scare moments like a grain of salt. So, The Messengers has a lot of scare moments, but it seems that that is the only thing that's going for it. It provides you with scares, but there's really no clear story, and the plot becomes absolutely ludicrous. It comes to the point where it becomes more laughable than horrific because the scare moments tend to constantly materialize on the screen. It's good to keep it subtle, but when it becomes too frequent, the scare tactics are just, like saying, shut up already. The fans took it to heart because they were forced into it. But to me, I thought the scare moments were just too repetitive, even for a 90-minute long movie. It's just absolutely pitiful that this movie is a potential dust collector because it has a lot of good quality traits that's made for an entertaining scarefest. The lack of an effective psychological horror is overwrought by the poorly execution that the narrative has to offer. It is the leading character seeing apparitions, or is she just delusional? If the horror effects had a connection with the synopsis, it would be actually one of those rare, obscure PG-13 rated horror films that actually works. But instead, it's just another fine line of modernized, watered down PG-13 horror films that just does not mesh. It's a cliched movie, and all I could say is it could have been better, but it just failed on so many terms. So the messenger just heavily paraphrases itself from a plethora of other horror films like the Amityville Horror, The Grudge, The Omen, Poltergeist, but with all the frequent crows running around about. I guess you could even throw in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, because, let's face it, this is all just a recycled mishmash of older but better horror films. I guess you can even have like a similarities to the 2003 Dennis Quaid Sharon Stone vehicle titled Cold Creek Manor. It's pretty much the same. It's another one of these cliched haunted house movies that just does not seem to ring any kind of original integrity or an original twist to the horror movie genre. This is just a compilation of horror films disguised as an original movie. But really, it's just the best of series of horror movies, all just blended in together for a 90-minute array of recycled movie montages. And even though she doesn't get praised for her acting, but I will give praise this time for Kristen Stewart, as she was the only performer who actually showed that she even cared about this poorly crafted film. Everyone else knew that this movie was going to be stupid, so they decided not to care about the material. And if they don't care, why should we? I mean, Dylan McDermott and Penelope Ann Miller, they just simply didn't care about the script. They were just really nonchalant about everything about this movie. I mean, most of the time, Penelope Ann Miller's character, Denise Solomon, all she was worried about was wiping off a stain off the wall of the house. Dylan McDermott, all he really cared too much about was planting sunflower seeds on his North Dakota estate, I should say. If there's any other character that probably stood out for me was John Corbett's character of John Burwell. I mean, of course, I remember John Corbett for his character role as Mia Vardalos' love interest, Ian Miller, from the 2002 movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where he plays a lovable character. At least here, he's breaking from typecast by not playing the nice guy. Well, he is a nice guy at first, but then becomes evil. And he was about the next only character that I truly cared for. Maybe even the twins, Evan and Theodore Turner, as the young boy who doesn't seem to be talking because of the fact that, due to an accident that causes him to be traumatized and has the ability to see the deceased while nobody else could. So, in some ways, he was actually quite effective too. But other than that, everyone else just did not seem to really be too much enthusiastic about this movie. And if they're not enthusiastic, why should anybody else? Something to think about. So the story goes a little something like this. Chicago natives Roy, played by Dylan McDermott, and Denise, played by Penelope Ann Miller, migrate to an isolated small town in North Dakota as a way to renewal their troubled issues that their daughter Jess is facing. Also, Roy, he's also been having trouble seeking employment in Chicago, so he decided to get away from the noise and the hustle and bustle of Chicago to settle in a more relaxed, somewhat tranquil, middle of nowhere city in North Dakota. I mean, nothing personal against North Dakota. I'm sure it's a beautiful state, and I'm sure there's quite a lot to explore. Or maybe small town life may be just the thing for him. So we know that Jess is a troubled teen when her daddy Deer says in his schmaltzy diatribe about doing this for your own good, tough love tactic, while he's growing sunflower seeds with Burwell. But we do take pity for Jess, for having to abandon her friends and to move into a dilapidated house while her father and hired assistant, played by John Corbett, are growing sunflower seeds. Suddenly, Jess starts seeing the spooks when she tells her parents about it. But of course, when she tells her parents about it, they easily dismiss her, saying that she's just making excuses because all old houses are haunted. That's the golden rule of when you're leaving the big city and settling for small town life, you're going to run into an old house, and more chances than not, it's going to be haunted. So the family's logic isn't very convincing, but what really cranks it up into full blown contrivances is when they had to include a subplot involving a pitchfork killer into the mix during the last 30 minutes. I mean, it's never mind that the ghosts are causing havoc to this lovely family, but now everything has to have an explanation. Can a spook just perform his or her mischief without spoon feeding its audience as to explain why they're causing evil as if we are all just a bunch of retards? We don't need no explanation as to why Michael Myers goes on a killing spree or why Freddy Krueger jumps into people's dreams and kills them. We don't need that. Just let them do their evil without any possible explanation. We don't need to be spoon fed. It just practically ruins the fun of horror movies. It's okay to have a little mystery and intrigue. Maybe things will be fully explained once the sequel turns. But I guess obviously they're probably most not likely going to have a Messengers 2 sequel anytime in the future. So I guess what you see is what you get. Early during the movie, we have to sit through the tiresome family plot that offers little to no interest or intrigue, with abysmal character development. There's also a lot of poor chemistry within the characters. I mean, I know you guys think this movie is stupid. We think this movie is stupid. Maybe not everyone, I don't know. I mean, if you disagree with me, you're entitled to your own opinions. I'm not going to condemn anyone. This is just my feelings, my initial thoughts. But, for what it is, I just wanted the actors and the performers to actually care about what they're doing instead of just, acting like you don't really give a shit. And the development of the characters just does not seem to be very well. But the direction by Danny and Oxide Pang does succeed in making the atmosphere very intensifying. There's a lot of very intense scenes in this movie. So I'm not really actually putting too much of the blame game as to why this movie is bad towards the Pang brothers. Also, the cinematography by David Geddes really creates that spooky atmosphere. Always good to have, especially during the Halloween season. So um, I'm really good about that. When the ghosts make their presence known, it truly is a defining moment that reminds us that we are actually seeing a horror film. Instead of putting the scares, we have to focus mostly on the contrived plot. Okay, so Jess is a troubled teen. They got into a car accident. The boy is obviously traumatized to the point where he can't speak. The original residences in the old house, the Rollinses just disappeared for no apparent reason. And there's no explanation if they're either still alive or even if they're dead. And I don't understand how this small town that they live in does not realize that there's a killer on the loose. How do they not know that? I mean, in a area where the population is pretty low, shouldn't one or two people know about it? Huh? Does that would that hurt to have a little bit of an explanation to the Rollins' disappearance and to the fact that there has been a murder and that they never warned that the house that they were moving in, that the Solomons were moving in, were was was haunted? But what makes this movie really sink low is that the ending lacks any kind of climax, even though the set pieces were right in front of us. The PG 13 horror film is suitably fit and for the rightful reasons, and not a good one at that. It integrates to convoluted plot devices and randomly selected twists that make no significance to this narrow plot. Only hardcore horror enthusiasts might like this film just for the scare moments. Sure, maybe a good popcorn and soda film to go with the stupidity. But don't rush when you eat, or you may just simply walk out when the film ends. So, to summarize, this movie lacks any kind of original integrity. The plot is narrower, is much more narrower than Olive Oil's girth. The story just completely is a turn off. The characters don't seem to generally care about each other. There's no chemistry. There's a lack of character development. And that's the negative stuff. On the positive side, Kristen Stewart seems to be the only character who genuinely cares about what's going on in the story. A little praise for the villain in the story being Burwell for being just a badass, even though his path to madness just does not make any sense whatsoever. And I'll give a little bit of a praise to Evan and Theodore Turner for their one-hit wonder performance as the boy who can only explain that he sees the spooks through pointing or through just his emotions. And even though he doesn't say anything through most of the movie, at least we get to see his emotions actually are very, very effective. But other than that, this movie just does not sit well. And for that, I give The Messengers on a scale out of 10, I give The Messengers a 4. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. Just remember, be kind, be courteous, and don't be rude. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Gerard Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.